may I ask you, did the New York Times do the same
hit job
for Nidal Hasan? Did they come out with Nidal Hasan and they say, rush to judgment? It is a factile and mistaken to attribute this particular madman's act directly to the Republicans or Tea Party members. This is what they're saying now. But it is legitimate to hold Republicans, and particularly their most virulent supporters in the media, responsible for the gale of anger that has produced the vast majority of these threats, setting the nation on edge.
So essentially they're saying, you can't really do it, but we're doing it anyway. You can't really hold Republicans responsible, but they are responsible.
Now, here's what they said after Nidal Hasan. In the aftermath of this unforgivable attack, it would be important to avoid drawing prejudicial conclusions from the fact that Major Hasan is an American Muslim whose parents came from the Middle East. President Obama was right when he told Americans, we don't know all the answers yet. And he cautioned everyone against jumping to conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
There are unverified reports. Some of his family members suggest that Major Hasan complained of harassment by fellow soldiers for being a Muslim. There are reports that some soldiers said they heard him shout, God is great, in Arabic. But investigations are not complete. And until they are complete, no one can begin to imagine what could have possibly motivated this latest appalling rampage. There may never be an explanation. And certainly there can never be a justification. So let me see this. Let's just put this out. Let's work this out together. Because we're told that the American people are violent. For this exercise, we have to understand their viewpoint that the American people are violent and they're reactionary. And if something happens and people jump to a conclusion, they will then go out and be a vigilante mob. And the president even said it. He was tired of Muslim families being rounded up. I didn't know that even happened. But with what I know about the press now, I guess there's a lot of things that we don't know. I still believe that didn't happen, but it must have, because the president said he was tired of Muslim families just being rounded up. So that, I guess, is what happens. If you hear about Major Nidal Hasan, or whatever his name is, what was his name?
Hasan
Nidal. If you hear about him, and people jump to conclusions and say, Allah Akbar, I think he was a terrorist, what will happen? The American people will then turn on Islamic people. Now, we have said, and here's the good news, we have said we're not that stupid. We know the difference between, good guys and bad guys. We can see. Now, that doesn't mean we don't question people who are silent and say, well, I wouldn't have done it, but I understand their motivation. That's a problem, isn't it? To remain silent in the face of terror and to not speak up. See, you can't have it both ways. You can't say, well, let's not jump to conclusions, but then not also ask for people to say, hey, can you tell me, you think this is a problem or not? Because you have to be able to reason it out. But remember, the reason why the New York Times is saying that they don't want to jump to conclusions, don't anyone jump to any conclusions, because it will cause violence. Now, may I ask what the New York Times editorial staff, what their motive is? May I ask for MSNBC and those on ABC and anywhere else that immediately jumped to conclusions, that have lectured the American people for the last 9 years, don't jump to conclusions because that will lead to violence and then just mass rounding people up. What is your motivation for not using your own advice and your own counsel here? By saying that the American people are so stupid and dim-witted that they will round people up or they will just shoot people if the media jumps to conclusions. And that's your theory. That's not mine. That's your theory. If you then take the same kind of story, because the only difference here is the lack of Allah Akbar and that this guy is legitimately crazy, by now jumping to conclusions and blaming it on what you would define as a cult or the religion of the right, a group of people that are just being hypnotized by their clerics, by rejecting your own advice on your own theory, aren't you promoting violence? I'm not accusing you of that. I'm pointing out that you should be accusing you of that. Not an Insider Extreme member yet? What are you waiting for? Sign up today at glennbeck.com/extreme.